Hey, welcome back to Dr. Dan, the Cyberman. Today we're going to talk about cyber attacks. So, what is a cyber attack? Cyber attacks are unwelcome attempts to steal, expose, alter, disable, or destroy information through unauthorized access to computer systems. That's from IBM.com in 2023. So, it says computer systems. Now let's think about this. Um, is it talking about just laptops? Well, back in the day, maybe that's what it would have talked about. But when we think about computer systems today, we can talk about our cell phones, right? We can talk about our TVs. We can talk about our refrigerators these days, right? I mean, some of our refrigerators are hooked up to the internet. It's pretty much anything that's hooked up to the internet. It's pretty much anything that is connected to other things, to other networks. They're networked together. Um, our 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 cars are now connected. I was just thinking about the FedEx truck just drove by, and I'm like, they know where the FedEx truck is. That specific one is everywhere that it goes, every stop that it makes. So, I mean, so it's connected. It could be an attack on that FedEx truck theoretically, right? Um, the the Christmas lights that are out right now. I'm shooting this um video during the holiday season. I mean, our Christmas lights are now connected to the internet, so potentially there could be an attack on the Christmas lights theoretically. Um, our medical devices are now connected, and let's just say this: if you're a bad guy and you're doing a cyber attack against medical devices, well, let's just say if you're caught, whatever happens to you, let's just say you probably deserve it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Why are cyber attacks conducted? Well, that's a good question. I mean, cyber attacks are really done more to damage operations, especially when it comes to companies. They want to damage companies' images, shut down their operations or their websites. They want to create some kind of financial impact, whether it's through ransoms, gain access to their bank information, uh, trick them into paying money, either through ransoms and stuff like that, um, or steal information such as the passwords, company secrets, personal information. But when you think about they're stealing information like the passwords and the company secrets and personal information, what are they going to use that information for? To do those other two above it, right? They're going to go use it to damage the company's image, or they're going to do it to shut down their operations because they're going to take those company secrets and they're going to reuse them for themselves, or they're going to tell the world how they're making the secret sauce, or they're going to um, or they're going to use those passwords to gain access to their bank information or something like that, right? So they're really, when they steal information, they're using it for some sort of other gain, whether it's damaging the operations or financial impact. Um, but then there's another part that we don't think about a lot, and that's the unintentional. That's where a developer, for example, could just have bad code. The developer created some bad code and it causes problems. It does shut down the operations. It does share passwords. It does open up access to certain things. So yeah, sometimes bad code it happens. Unfortunately, um, sometimes plugging in malicious devices. So we talk about like USB devices. Um, and we'll go through this type of an attack here in a little bit as well. But you have a USB device, you plug in a malicious device or something that has something bad on it. Sometimes we buy these. It's really easy to go onto Amazon and or to some of these websites and buy some really cheap things on there, and plug them into our computers. But do we know what's inside of those things? Yeah, it runs the little toy that we just bought our 3-year-old, but do we know what it's actually doing in the background when we're charging it or when we're plugging it in? Is it phoning home somewhere? Now, I don't want to be that person that tries to create the craziness and everything's bad and everything's always going to be bad. But those are the kind of things that we got to start thinking about. Spamming. What's spamming? Well, spamming is, for example, again, I'm recording this during the holiday season. The company sends out the the Christmas or holiday email. It says, "Oh, happy holidays to everybody," right? And they send it out to all 1,000 people that work for the company, and never fails, one person at least hits reply all. Of course, we've got things that can stop that now, but used to be that they would hit reply all, and they would say, "You too," or "I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays," or whatever. And it would go back to all 1,000 people, right? And then if all 1,000 people hit reply all, it goes back to all 1,000 people 1,000 times, right? And so what is that doing to the network? What is that doing to the servers? What is that doing to um, to our email system? Slowing everything way down, right? So that's spamming. So that's a type of attack. Who are the cyber attackers? Well, it could be current employees, right? We just talked about one. Um, it could be disgruntled employees, um, current disgruntled employees. Could be former employees. That's why when we have an employee that leaves the company, or a student that is leaving the school, whether it's college or whether it's a high school or grade school or whatever, that has access to the networks and stuff like that. We want to remove their access as soon as possible. Give them some sort of guest access if they need guest access to get access to their grades or access to the whatever. We remove their access only to what they absolutely need, because we don't want them having the same access that they had, because they had access to stuff that they should not be able to take outside of the organization or use outside of the organization. They can have access to some of the stuff that is theirs, but that's it, right? Um, Insiders that make big mistakes. It could be somebody that has access to a spreadsheet that accidentally hits delete, that goes into a SharePoint site, hits delete on a file, um, does some sort of an access change, and they think they're only changing their access, but they change access for everybody in that Teams folder. Those kind of things, just insiders making big mistakes. Um, Criminal organizations. So we used to talk about, back in the 20s and the 30s and such, we used to talk about the mafia. We used to talk about all these different criminal organizations. Well, they still kind of exist. May not be the exact same ones, but they do still have those criminal organizations that are more cyber savvy, and they do cyber attacks. So those are the kind of organizations that do exist still today, and they do um, like I said, they do cyber attacks. State actors. So state actors are cyber attackers that work for typically they typically work for a country. So it could be a lot of times you'll hear that they're worried about China, or we're worried about Russia, or we're worried about North Korea, and their cyber attacks that's coming from there. They have different cyber organizations that are sponsored by the countries themselves. Do we have them here in the United States? Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. It's not for me to say. Do they have them in other countries? I'm sure they do. Again, not for me to say. But we do know that there are state-sponsored organizations that um, that do perform cyber attacks. Hackers. We know what hackers are. Everybody knows what a hacker is. We've talked about those for decades. Now, hacktivists. What are hacktivists? Hacktivists are hackers that do it for a cause. Um, they could be doing it for environmental reasons. They could be doing hacking for any kind of cause that's out there. Probably the best example I can give you that maybe you've heard of. It was on the news back when the Russia-Ukraine war first started. Is there were a lot of hacktivist groups like Anonymous. I don't know if you've heard of Anonymous, but there were a lot of hacktivist groups that went after the Russia media and the Russian government on behalf of Ukraine. And so they were doing it for a reason. So they were considered hacktivists at that time. So the four general stages of a cyber attack. So this is really no different than any other type of an attack, whether it's military or anything else. It's very similar to the way that any other type of attack would be. So we talk about the survey. The survey is they identify easy targets. Those are the targets that you're going to go after first. Why would you go after an easy target first? Well, first of all, you're gonna be looking for ways to get in the door. I mean, you're not going to go through the front door first. I mean, unless the door is wide open, right? Going to go look for those little windows that are open, because then might be able to get a foothold in there. So when you think about the different military attacks that you've heard of over the years, they go and they hit these little tiny towns first, but that gives them a little bit of a foothold into the country, right? There's safety in numbers, right? Well, if they can take a few of those numbers away, and then take a few more of those numbers away from a next easy target, and then there's a few more and a few more and a few more, it gives them more and more of a foothold. They use tools to discover things about the targets. So they'll use things that will go out and that will look for social media, look through social media. That'll look for things about the network. That'll look for things about their systems. And why do they do that? They'll look for things like in social media, for example, on admins, like admin assistants. Why would they do that? Well, they'll look for admin assistants because a lot of times they'll have an admin assistant that has just as much access as the executive does. And trying to get a hold of an executive is a lot harder than trying to get a hold of an admin assistant. And I'll give you a funny story. A lot of times the admin assistant actually does more of the actual button clicking and stuff like that than the executive does. Funny story was I was doing a phishing testing exercise years ago, and this executive was getting hit on these phishing exercises all the time. This we were doing the exercises, and she was getting caught all the time. And so I went to her and I'm like, hey, um, you know, we got to talk about this. You're clicking the button all the time on these phishing exercises, and it's not good, especially at the executive level. We want to make sure that you're you're setting a good example for the rest of the people. I can't tell you can't we can't yell at your people or correct your people when you're doing it too. And we found out that she's like, I'm telling you, Dan, I haven't been clicking. And I'm like, okay. So we went and found out that her admin is the one that's been clicking the button. But her admin was like, oh, she got caught. And it was like, oh, you got caught. But when you looked at her admin's um, record was perfectly spotless clean because she saw that she got caught when it was on the executive side. So when she went to her side, she's like, oh, this is a phishing email. So she would report it as a phishing email. So she would get caught on the executive side, but she wouldn't get caught on her side. So we ended up having to have this conversation with the admin. But that just shows you that, you know, she's doing a lot of stuff on the executive side, and they have a lot of access. So you'd go after the admin a lot of times on those kind of things. So the delivery, command and control. How are they going to be able? That means how are they going to be able to control the systems once they get in, or let's say if they get in? But they know that they're going to be able to get in, especially if they found an easy target. Once they get in, how are they going to be able to gain control? How are they going to be able to command and control the systems? Fake websites. They put fake websites up there. They put these sites up there that look cool, things that will interest them, so or something that looks legitimate to them. It could be a it could be, you know, when it's around time um, to look at health benefits, put a fake health benefit site up, a new benefit, right? Um, Again, I was talking about this is the holiday season. I was looking at something on social media, and I saw this one thing that keeps coming up. It's been coming up a lot, and it was something that I thought would be cool for my kids for Christmas. They're all driving, and some of you that live in the north would understand this too. That, you know, if your car sits outside, it gets a lot of frost on it. And it's this thing that's supposed to be you put in your car, it spins around, keeps the frost from being on your windshield. I thought, wow, this would be cool to have at Christmas time or for a Christmas present for my kids. And so I started doing some research on it, and I noticed that you could buy it from this website. And by the way, it was on Amazon, so it was on Amazon too. But you could buy it from this website for $9. You buy it from this website all the way up to like $79 for the same thing. Or maybe it was for two for $79, but still, the price difference is just amazing. And so it got you to thinking. First of all, that's a huge difference. So there's a red flag right away, right? So then I started doing some more research on it. There was a guy or several people that had done some that had bought them to do research on them specifically. And sure enough, basically what they were is they had these different companies had bought a air freshener, a fancy air freshener, and they put lights on them, and they were selling them as these things that were going to keep the frost off of your car, and they absolutely would not keep frost off of your car. They make your car smell good. And the one guy said, "I'm going to be honest with you," he goes, "It wasn't even a good air freshener." So, if you spent your $9, whether you spent $9 or $80, um, wasn't even going to keep your car smelling even real good. So, you got a fake website. We look really good. Websites look great. Something that excited you, something that got you in there, was getting ready to send you, but luckily, didn't was doing my research and didn't put my credit card information in or anything like that. Obviously, was doing wanting to make sure that before started heading down any of those paths, that I was doing did my research, especially when you see those things pop up, especially around the holiday time and stuff like that. Just definitely check those things out before you do that. Email or thumb drive, easy delivery method. Again, I know you guys know that I love to tell stories. Um, but here's another one. Uh, old an old trick that they used to do is this was very popular for a while. They used to throw thumb drives or USB drives, whatever you want to call them, and they used to set them down right next to entryways, and they would always put the name on it, and it would say something like "bachelor party pics" or "wedding photos," something that would catch somebody's attention, especially something like wedding photos. If it says wedding photos on there, your thoughts immediately, whether you're a guy or a girl, um, your thoughts immediately are like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to want these back. They're going to want these back. So if it just says wedding photos, what are you going to do? You're like, I don't know whose wedding photos these are. So your immediate thought is, I'm going to help this person out, stick it into my laptop, figure out whose photos they are, and I'll take it down to their desk and give it to them. Well, as soon as you stick that into your laptop, what's going to happen? It's going to send malware through the network, through your laptop, through the network. That's one easy way to get malware into the network very, very effectively with very little work on their part, right? So the breach, they're meant to go unnoticed. They want to get into your network. They want to sit there unnoticed. Sometimes it'll be legitimate emails along with malicious emails. So they know that there's emails going out around tax time that are legitimate. They'll send out malicious emails along at the same time. They look real, but they'll send malicious ones all at the same time. They download like fake or corrupt application updates. You see these a lot. Update Windows, update Excel, whatever, something like that. The effect. Sometimes these attacks can go on for years. They can sit idle in your network for years. And what they want to do is they want to move across the network. They want to get to the bigger targets, but they want to do it quietly. They want to do it. They want stealth. They want to be stealth. They want to do it quietly. So sometimes they'll sit there and then they'll move along just quietly, so like nobody's seeing them. So they want to steal as much information as they can. They hold on to it. And then once they can get a hold of it, they lock it down. Sometimes they'll hold it either inside of the network or outside of the network, but they'll encrypt it and they'll lock it down and they'll hold the encryption key for ransom. So then you have to pay them to get the encryption key in order to be able to get your information back. Again, it's to disrupt or damage business and to make their money, right? So let's talk about the types of attacks, the top 10 types of attacks. Malware. We know a lot about malware. These are the viruses, Trojans, spyware, keyloggers, things like that. Malicious software that's installed on a device. Phishing. You're starting to get to know a lot about phishing. You guys have probably heard about this before. Email, texting. You see the text ones all the time now, especially around the holidays. Your package isn't going to arrive on time. Click here to put in your information. Whaling, spear phishing. Spear phishing is where they go after a certain group of people or a certain individual. Whaling is typically where they go after an executive, somebody big. Typically, it has urgency. Typically, it comes from outside the organization. Sometimes it can come from inside the organization, but typically it's outside the organization. Somebody you wouldn't normally hear from. Sometimes it is, but most of the time, it's someone you wouldn't normally hear from, and they're weird requests. DDoS and DOS attacks, denial of service attacks. That's the kind where I was just talking about a little bit ago, where the server gets overloaded. Basically, just requests coming one right after another. Boom, 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 boom. This happens a lot on websites. So this happened when Black Friday and Cyber Monday first started happening online. When they started doing a lot of the stuff online, it started happening a lot. Taylor Swift had this happen a lot on her when she was selling a lot of her tickets and stuff like that. Basically, got DDoSed unintentionally, right? Ransomware. That's what I was just talking about, where they attack on some files or systems, and they encrypt them, and you must pay a ransom in order to be able to get that file back. Password attacks, brute force attacks on passwords, right? So there's different kinds. So yeah, the brute force. They try to guess your password. Boom, 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 boom. Just keep guessing, 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 guessing. Dictionary attacks. That's just the most common passwords. Social engineering. That's where they go out and they keep trying. Um, they look at. They can do a bunch of different ways, but they can go out to your social media, look at a bunch of different things, and say, hey, I see that their old car or their first car was a Mustang, that that they used to go to school at such and such, and then their kids' names are blah 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 blah. Their birthday is this and this and this and this. Their mother's maiden name is this, and they're blah 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 blah. You see all of this stuff, and so that they try to get that, or they'll call you. Hey, this is so and so from the IT department. Need your password this afternoon. We're going to be doing an update after everybody leaves. Okay. Man in the middle attacks. Um, Man in the middle attack. This is where a bad actor gets in between you and your intended recipient. So it can be from an email where they grab the emails that are in transit. This is the internet where that you do a web search or you click a link and it takes you to a site. But it takes you to your site, but it actually makes a stop. You don't know it. It makes a stop, and what it does is it kind of follows you, um, and it basically records stuff as you're going to the next site. So it's a man in the middle. So you stop somewhere else first, and then you go there, and it kind of pays attention to where you're going and what you're doing, and it tries to grab your information. Cryptojacking. This is where someone takes over your computer. You may not know it, and they're using it to mine cryptocurrency. SQL injection. This is a vulnerable site where you may where it's actually you have a database behind you, and it's vulnerable, and it has a bad actor running scripts to make commands to the database and to extract data or delete the databases. Drive-by attacks. It's going to go to a legitimate website, but then it either is redirected to pop-up windows or other sites. Zero-day exploits. That's a vulnerability that's been identified by bad actors before the owner of the application even knows about it. So that they don't have, like, there's no patching that is able to fix it yet. Can cyber attacks be prevented? Yes and no. So we try to put policies and procedures in place to reduce the likelihood of attacks. We try to put tools in place to reduce the likelihood of attacks. We put tools in place to identify should an attack happen. And then we have malicious actors that are typically ahead of the controls, but we try to implement. Right? There's malicious actors that are typically ahead of us, but we do the best that we can. And then training. We try to help so that you guys can see what um, you can see what's going on. You can identify things as they're happening and let us in security know. And then we typically have a security operations center that's constantly monitoring. And then we currently have different layers of defense within our companies. And last but not least, there's some of our references for today. And then thank you. And I appreciate your time today. And we hope to see you all soon.